Hello everyone and welcome to the first game we're going to show from the final round of the 2019 Isle of Man chess tournament. It's Levon Aronian versus Magnus Carlsen, and it's, well, a lot is at stake here, not only great standings at the tournament, but also Levon's shot at the candidates tournament. So we're not going to dwell too long on it. We do have one photo of this event. Here it is. Nope, that's just Ding sipping on his water. Here it is. I haven't prepared it, so let me just resize that for a bit. We do have a very nice handshake here. There you have it. The handshake before the start of the game. Levon's d4 is already on the board. You can see Magnus holding a bag of goodies there on the right, and also the gentleman behind him ready to, scan for any suspicious activity, on and off the board. So that being said, let's check out the game. And also, I would just like to mention today is Maxime Vachier-Lagrav's birthday. So if you run into him, in a bar or a library, make sure you congratulate him. So without further ado, let's check out the game. Levon with the white pieces opens with d4. And we have knight to f6 by Magnus, c4, e6, knight to c3, and not the Queen's Gambit decline, but rather the Nimzo Indian. We have bishop to b4, f3 now by Levon, the Kmoch variation, and now c5. We have d5 advancing in the center, and now b5, trying to get white to capture here to loosen his grip on the center, but of course white is not interested in that. Levon goes e4, and now d6 by Magnus. We have bishop to d2, and now there are a couple of moves that have been played here. a6 is a known move, b captures on c4 is a known move. Richard Rapport played e captures on d5 against Shahriar Mamedyarov in the St. Louis Rapid Tournament. We've covered that game, I believe, and he won a very nice game. But here bishop captures on c3 by Magnus is a new move, so already as of move 7, we have a completely new game. We have bishop captures, and now Carlsen just advances the b pawn. b4 gets rid of the bishop from this very nice diagonal. Bishop back to d2, and now Carlsen castles. Bishop returns to e3. Now Levon wants to develop the queen via the d2 square, and now e captures on d5. Of course, you don't want to open up the center as your king is still in the middle of the board, so c captures on d5, and now knight f to d7. Sort of a bit of an unprincipled move, playing with the same piece twice in the opening, as you have a lot of pieces undeveloped on the queen side, but with good reason. Levon's king is still in the center of the board, so we want to play f5, bust open the center, get your rook a nice open, or at least a semi-open file, to use for attacking purposes. So knight to e2 by Levon, and now f5, preparing to capture on e4. We have e captures on f5, rook captures on f5, and now knight to g3, pushing Magnus's rook back. Rook to e5, now pinning the bishop, and king to f2. Unpinning and also defending the bishop on e3. We have queen to h4 by Magnus. Now, things are definitely happening on the board, and Levon goes for queen to d2. And knight to f6. So you can see that it can get a little unpleasant for white. For example, not at the moment, but if this rook was, for example, on f8, knight to e4 check would win the queen. The pawn will not be able to capture. The knight is also pinned, so you will not be able to capture. Not possible at the moment, but if you give Magnus a move or two, it could get very ugly for white. So rook to c1. Here Levon wants rook to c4. He wants to kick away Carlsen's queen from such a nice square. Bishop to a6 by Magnus, not allowing it, or also offering a trade of light square bishop. So if bishop captures, knight captures, then Carlsen can very quickly get the rook into the game, like we discussed. And now b3 by Levon, preparing ideas like bishop to c4 or maybe something else. And here the situation on the clock is 1 hour and 6 minutes for Levon and 46 minutes for Magnus. So Magnus definitely taking his time here. And here he played knight captures on d5. I know you guys are wondering if this is a free pawn. You could capture with the rook or with the knight. So it's interesting what happens if rook captures. If rook captures, the queen is under attack. Queen to b2. Now you trade bishops, bishop capture, rook captures, and now knight to c6. And you will get your rook to c4 move, and now comes knight to d4, and we get this crazy position that I think it's impossible to evaluate from the position before anything even starts. So Magnus avoids it, and instead he goes for knight captures on d5, which is, it offers a lot of play. For example, what can you play here? Here there is this idea of bishop captures on c5. It seems like a very tricky move. Bishop captures, pawn captures, rook captures. now threatening, as you just captured 2 pawns, to also win back your piece. But black has queen to d8, guarding the pawn, guarding the knight, and now bishop to c4. Just pinning the attacked piece, basically not allowing the knight to move, but also the knight couldn't move because the queen would be hanging on d8. So here bishop captures, pawn captures, and it seems like now you are winning the piece back because the knight still cannot move. Problem is black has queen to b6, and now you don't have a good move. The rook will fall with check, or you can play queen to d4, and now knight to c6 comes. Again, you don't have a move. There's just nothing to play here. The queen has to move. You are out of useful squares from where you can guard the rook. That's just it. Game over. So after this knight captures on d5, you also might consider rook to e1. But you already placed the rook on c1. Levin really wants to get this rook over to c4 at some point. But it is an interesting line. But after knight captures on e3, rook captures, you get queen to d4. And now everything just gets traded. Queen captures, pawn captures, rook captures on e5, d captures, and bishop captures on a6. With knight captures, and rook will come to the only open file on the board, rook to c1, and Carlsen would be up a pawn, but Levin at least gets the open file for his rook. So an equal position. But Levin wants more. He plays rook to c4. Now, tries to give up the exchange, but not really. The rook cannot be captured. If rook captures, bishop captures, then there's just no saving this knight. You don't only lose the knight, but after you capture this comes with check. You could also lose the rook here, so it would be completely winning for Levin. So after rook to c4, Carlsen goes back. We have queen to e7, now putting additional pressure on the bishop here. And now rook to e4, blocking this attack. We have queen to e6 by Magnus, now also adding another defender to the knight on d5. And here comes a bishop to f4, now forcing a trade. We have knight captures on f4, queen captures on f4, and now bishop captures on f1. Here you don't capture right away, because if rook captures, then you get knight to d7 in, and then you get additional control over the e5 square. So here we have rook captures on e5 by Levin, and now the situation on the clock is 43 minutes. Levin, 28 minutes Carlsen. We have d captures on e5, and now queen to e4 by Levin. Knight to c6 as the rook is under attack. Finally, the knight is developed. The rook can also come into the game, and now rook captures on f1. There was no time to save the bishop, and we have c4 here. So what do you do here? Carlsen finds a very nice idea. He plays knight to f5. There's no need to do anything rash on the queen side. You could capture a pawn. Sure, you could go b captures here, but that just ruins your pawn structure, and black will just continue development. If queen captures, it's not a problem. Carlsen decided to give this pawn back, but Levin finds a knight to f5, and it's an even better idea because c captures on b3, and Carlsen really had to calculate this. He plays c captures on b3, and of course, do you see what Levin's idea was here? Why did he allow such a move? I'm sure you do. You could recapture on b3 right away, but Levin's idea is queen captures on c6. Of course, you have to capture. Queen captures on c6, and now knight to e7 check. And it seems like Levin won a piece, and in fact he did, but Carlsen has a passed pawn. So king to f8, knight captures queen, and now b captures on a2. So threatening nothing for the moment, but if you can get this pawn pushing, then it will be very good for black. So knight captures on b4, and now why did Carlsen allow this? How does Carlsen unwind here? You're down a piece. If the a2 pawn is captured, you're just lost. So feel free to pause the video and try to find the only good move for Magnus in this position while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding the only move that doesn't lose. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, rook to b8. This is the idea. Rook to d8 with the same idea that if knight captures, you're going to go rook to d2. Doesn't work, because if rook to d8, then just king to e3, and there is never a rook to d2 move. So rook to b8 is much better because it comes with an attack on the knight. So congratulations to everyone. We have rook to a1. If you capture, then we already mentioned, if you capture, rook b2 check, king will move, you're gonna capture here, and Carlsen is just up a pawn, and it's even past a pawn, so the only one with the winning chances would be Carlsen here. So after rook to b8, we have rook to a1. Levin decides to give the knight back this way. Rook captures on b4, we have rook captures on a2, and now rook back to b7, guarding the a7 pawn. So Magnus up a pawn, we have king to e3, king to e7, and after rook to a6, it was in this position on move 34 that Levin and Magnus agreed to a draw. So neither of them will be winning this tournament, and it's hard to say if this will be enough for Levin to get his spot in the candidates. Everything depends on, I believe, how Wang Hao finishes his game against David Howell, because Wang Hao has the best rating performance, and there will be no rapid or blitz tiebreaks. It will just be the final round is over, and that's it. We just decide who gets the spot in the candidates. So we're gonna know more after some more games finish. This game finished very early, so I decided to show it, as it was a really interesting idea, that rook to c4 move by Levin, and well, the entire approach on how to take down Magnus. But Magnus took his time and defended very well. So once again, I do hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Michael Diener for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the Chess.com Isle of Man chess tournament, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions, and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.